Chapter 1. Born from the Mind of Zeus. The mythic arrival of Athena. From the deepest chambers of Olympus echoed a cry not of pain, but of revelation. The myth begins not in a cradle, but in the storm-racked skull of Zeus himself. In a time before time, the king of the gods swallowed Metis, the titaness of wisdom, fearing a prophecy that her child would surpass him. But wisdom, once ingested, does not simply vanish. It transforms, it grows. For 9 months, the mind of Zeus thundered with visions and strategy, with blueprints of cities not yet built and wars not yet fought. His temples pulsed with unbearable pressure, until one day, in an act both surgical and sacred, Hephaestus cleaved Zeus's brow with a gleaming axe. And from that divine fracture leapt Athena, fully grown, armored, and radiant. No infant's cry, no soft whimper. Her first sound was the ringing of metal, the clink of shield against breastplate, as she stepped forward into Olympus not as a daughter, but as a force. She emerged not from the womb, but from thought itself. Born of intellect and war, yet untouched by chaos, she carried both clarity and conquest in her gaze. Her spear was not just a weapon. It was the embodiment of reason directed into action. From the start, she stood apart from the other gods, not driven by vanity or indulgence, but by purpose. In her, Olympus saw not just another deity, but a new order. The old ways, wild, impulsive, titanic, had found their balance. Strategy had joined strength. Vision had joined violence. The myths may vary, but the message endures. Wisdom does not wait to be born. It forces its way into the world. And when it does, it wears a helmet. Chapter 2. The Strategist's Mantle. Athena and the Art of War. Athena was not the goddess of war in the way Ares was. Where Ares burned with bloodlust and chaos, Athena sharpened her mind like a blade, precise, reasoned, and cold. She did not charge into battle with fury. She waited. She studied. And when she struck, it was as if the battlefield had already surrendered. To Athena, war was not a frenzy. It was a science. She was the goddess of strategos, the higher form of combat, where plans outweighed passions and victory was secured long before the first sword was drawn. While Ares embodied the brutality of war, Athena represented its order. She taught generals to read the terrain as if it were a scroll. She whispered into the dreams of kings, offering visions of maneuvers not yet imagined. And when cities invoked her, it wasn't with sacrifice and rage, but with diagrams drawn in sand and councils held by torchlight. Legends say she stood invisible beside Odysseus at Troy, guiding his hand as he carved the path home. Others say she sat at the edge of sieges, her presence felt in the way one side's archers suddenly found the high ground. Athena wore no crown, but her helmet gleamed with clarity. In her grasp, the spear was not just a weapon, it was an axis of decision, spun in silence until it pointed toward the most efficient victory. Even her shield, the aegis, was not for brute defense. It was psychological warfare, adorned with the head of Medusa, designed to paralyze the unprepared with terror. Her warfare began in the mind and ended with minimal bloodshed. Her influence wasn't about conquest, it was about control. And in a world ruled by impulse and chaos, Athena's greatest weapon was always patience. Chapter 3. The City of Her Heart. Athena and the Birth of Athens. Athens did not always bear her name. Long ago, it was an unnamed hilltop city, strategically placed, modest in power, but destined for greatness, and the gods knew it. 2 immortals laid claim to the rising city, Poseidon, lord of the seas, and Athena, goddess of wisdom and war. Their rivalry sparked not battle, but contest. Each would offer the people a gift, and the better gift would decide the patron deity of the city. Poseidon struck the earth with his trident, and from the ground surged a saltwater spring, or in some versions, a magnificent horse, snorting waves and thunder. A symbol of motion, trade, war, and chaos, the promise of maritime power. But Athena stepped forward and offered something quieter. She planted a seed, and from the earth rose the olive tree. It gave oil for lamps, fruit for nourishment, and wood for peace or construction, a gift of civilization. Long-lasting, humble, wise, the people chose Athena. From that moment, the city bore her name, Athens, and became her mirror. A civilization guided not only by power, but by thought, not only by arms, but by art. Under her watch, Athens would become a cradle of democracy, philosophy, architecture, and military strategy. She did not rule the city with temples alone. She whispered into the minds of its statesmen, sculptors, soldiers, and thinkers. She walked the colonnades as a presence felt, not seen. Even Heracles, who raised the Parthenon, claimed inspiration from her counsel. Athens was not merely a city, it was an idea, and Athena was not simply its guardian. She was its soul. Chapter 4. Wisdom in the Forge. Athena and Hephaestus. The forge is not always fire and fury. Sometimes it is intellect under pressure, iron-shaped not just by heat, but by vision. Among the Olympians, none understood this duality better than Hephaestus, god of the forge, and Athena, goddess of wisdom. One was born of flame and hammer, the other of mind and strategy. Yet together they represented the union of innovation and thought, artisanship elevated to divinity. Their relationship was complex. Hephaestus was drawn to Athena, seeing in her not only beauty, but brilliance, something rare in Olympus. One myth speaks of a failed advance, an awkward, desperate attempt by Hephaestus to claim her. Athena, untouched and unyielding, brushed him aside, and from that moment, their bond transformed. Not of romance, but of shared purpose. Together, they crafted wonders. The chariot, once a crude war engine, became refined under their shared design. Siege weapons, once powered by brute force, became precision instruments, and the owl, the living emblem of Athena's wisdom, was said to be given bronze-feathered forms in Hephaestus's workshop, mechanical guardians in her temples. More than weapons, they shaped ideas into matter, shields that bore history, armor that channeled myth, statues that were more than stone, repositories of divine intent. Their forge was not bound by fire, but by focus. When Athens raised its great temples, it was not only architects and masons who laid the foundations. In the quiet between hammer blows and brushstrokes, there was Athena's insight. In the molten metal, there was Hephaestus's fire. Together, they burned wisdom into stone and steel. In a world of gods driven by chaos, these two forged clarity. Chapter 5. The Patron of Heroes. Athena and the Mortal Champions. To walk with Athena was not merely to be guided, it was to be chosen. Unlike the other gods who treated mortals as toys or pawns, Athena saw in humanity a flicker of what the divine could never fully grasp: resilience through reason. She was not a goddess of favoritism, but of merit. She did not appear in thunder or flame, but in the quiet pause before a choice, the moment when a mortal might rise beyond themselves. Her chosen were never the strongest, nor the most impulsive. They were thinkers, survivors, strategists, heroes who, through patience and intellect, defied the odds. Take Odysseus, the cunning king of Ithaca. While others fought with sword and roar, he fought with silence and disguise. Through every island, every monster, every false shore, it was Athena who whispered to him, cloaked him in mist, and gave him clarity when others despaired. Or Perseus, sent on a doomed quest to slay Medusa. Athena armed him not just with a mirrored shield, but with foresight and discipline, teaching him to look not at the threat, but around it. Then there was Heracles, that pillar of brute strength. Even he, in his darkest labors, found himself leaning on Athena's logic. Her voice, the only one that could calm the storm within him. These were not just tales of myth, they were lessons. Athena taught that heroism was not born from rage, but from restraint. Not from defiance, but from understanding. To be a hero under her gaze was to be forged in both heart and mind. She did not demand worship. She offered partnership. And in doing so, she left a legacy etched into every mortal who dared to think their way through the impossible. Chapter 6. The Unseen Hand. Athena's role in the Trojan War. The Trojan War was not simply a clash of armies. It was a chessboard of divine intervention, pride, prophecy, and revenge. And among the gods who circled the battlefield, none wove herself more deeply or more strategically than Athena. She did not scream like Ares or hurl storms like Hera. She influenced through subtler means: choice, hesitation, whisper. Where others sought chaos, she sought outcome. It began with a contest, the judgment of Paris, a golden apple cast into a divine gathering inscribed, "To the fairest." Hera promised dominion, Aphrodite love, but Athena offered victory. When Paris chose beauty over wisdom, it was not merely a slight. It was the ignition of her resolve. She would not be dishonored, not with wrath, but with architecture. Throughout the war, Athena guided the Greeks, not as a goddess of death, but of direction. She steeled the hands of Ajax, guided Diomedes' spear, and gave Odysseus the cunning to see beyond brute strength. She stood in the shadows of strategy meetings and battle maps, ever present, never idle. When the walls of Troy would not fall, it was Athena who turned deception into salvation. The wooden horse, a symbol of surrender, a gift with teeth, was not simply Odysseus's idea. It was whispered by Athena into his sleep, a vessel of fate wrapped in cleverness. And yet, her involvement was never emotionless. Her favor was earned, her anger lethal. When Ajax the Lesser defiled her temple during the sack of Troy, she unleashed storms upon the returning fleet. Even those she favored could fall from her grace. Athena's hand was not always visible, but it was always there. In plans, in pauses, in the moments before history turned. Chapter 7. Athena and the Parthenon. Stone, symbol, sanctuary. High above the city she loved, Athena's gaze was carved into marble. The Parthenon was not just a temple, it was an idea in stone, a monument to wisdom, balance, and order. Constructed during the Golden Age of Athens under the guidance of Heracles, the Parthenon was more than a house for the goddess. It was her body made architectural, every column a limb, every frieze a breath of myth, every proportion a whisper of celestial logic. Its very blueprint echoed the harmony Athena represented. At the heart of this sanctuary stood the colossal statue of Athena Parthenos, crafted by Phidias from gold and ivory. Over 30 feet tall, she stood with shield in one hand, Nike, the goddess of victory, in the other, and the serpent of wisdom coiled at her feet. She was not just a guardian, she was an anchor of ideals. Her gaze, it was said, could make citizens stand straighter. The Parthenon itself was a paradox, simultaneously fortress and temple, silent and expressive. It was designed not only for the gods, but for the minds of men. Its columns were subtly bowed to appear straight to the human eye, a trick of perception perfected in the name of divine geometry. Within its walls, festivals like the Panathenea honored her with music, athletic games, and a grand procession. Robes were woven for her statue. Oaths were sworn in her name. Yet Athena was never possessive. She did not need incense to exist. She lived in the discipline of the builders, in the measured stride of architects, in the pride of a city reaching upward. And even now, Though its marbles have cracked and empires have turned to dust, the Parthenon still stands, weathered but resolute. A temple not just to a goddess, but to the enduring idea that thought, beauty, and strength can coexist in one sacred place. Chapter 8. Athena and the Olive Tree. Roots of Civilization. Among all her symbols, the owl, the spear, the shield, it is the olive tree that endures as Athena's most profound gift. Unlike the artifacts of war or the architecture of empire, the olive tree is subtle, quiet. It does not conquer, it sustains. The myth says that when Athena and Poseidon competed for the devotion of the early Athenians, she offered not a monument or miracle, but a tree. From barren rock, she coaxed forth a living branch, green, eternal, and full of potential. What Poseidon offered was power. What Athena offered was permanence. From that tree grew not just olives, but oil for light, wood for tools, and nourishment for the body and spirit. In time, olive oil would become the bloodline of Greek economy and culture, used in temples, households, medicine, and even war. Athletes anointed themselves with it before competitions. Warriors rubbed it into leather and flesh before marching. Philosophers lit their lamps with it as they questioned existence long into the night. But more than its uses, it was the meaning that mattered. The olive tree stood for peace, for balance, for slow, deliberate growth in a world too often ruled by storms and fire. Even in death, the olive tree is not silent. Its gnarled wood is carved into symbols, into sacred objects, into vessels of continuity. It roots itself deeply, surviving drought, war, and time. In a world of marble ruins and fading myths, olive trees still grow, some said to be thousands of years old, whispering of gods long past. In every olive branch extended, in every grove that thrives despite the odds, there is Athena, not in form, but in legacy. She did not gift fire nor flight. She gave humanity something greater, the invitation to endure. Chapter 9. Goddess of the Mind. Athena and Philosophy. Though forged in the fire of war, Athena's truest dominion was not the battlefield. It was the mind. In the quiet alcoves of thought, the shaded corners of logic and language, her spirit moved unseen. She was the divine spark in Socrates' questions, the balance in Plato's forms, and the silent audience to Aristotle's syllogisms. Though her temples rose high on hills, her truest altar was the human intellect, where thought becomes speech, and speech becomes change. Athens was not merely a city of stone, but of ideas. In its agora, philosophers walked barefoot and spoke of virtue, ethics, numbers, and stars. They disagreed. They challenged. They built invisible cathedrals of reasoning. And though they named her rarely in their dialogues, Athena was always there, watching from behind every conclusion. The owl of Athena, perched beside scrolls and lanterns, became a lasting symbol of wisdom, not because it saw in the light, but because it saw through the dark. It did not fear nightfall. It welcomed the clarity only found in stillness and reflection. Even the Academy, the Lyceum, and later the Stoics and Neoplatonists, each sought what Athena embodied, the harmony between the inner world and the outer one, between logos and action, between knowing and doing, for she was never a god of blind faith. She was a goddess of earned understanding. Athena did not demand followers. She inspired thinkers. She did not decree doctrine. She invited inquiry. Her greatest tribute was not sacrifice, but the act of asking why. In every library built, every question asked in earnest, every candle lit to read a forgotten scroll, there is Athena, not seen, but always present. Chapter 10. Guardian of Cities. Athena and the Polis. Ideal. Athena was not a goddess of empire. She did not favor conquest for its own sake. She was guardian of the polis, the city not as dominion, but as community, as intellect made social, as the grand experiment of civilization itself. While other deities ruled over wild places or elemental forces, Athena bound herself to the constructed world: gates, forums, theaters, and schools. Where laws were spoken, where debates echoed through marble halls, where architects measured lines with string and sunlight, that was her sanctuary. She was more than protector of Athens. She was the archetype of urban harmony, of the balance between order and freedom, structure and spontaneity, tradition and innovation. The owl was her symbol not only for wisdom, but for vigilance. Its wide eyes watched the city as she did, not from above, but from within. The polis was sacred not because it was perfect, but because it was striving. It was the space where humans gathered to challenge chaos, to legislate peace, to raise temples not just to gods, but to ideals. It was in the assembly, the agora, the theater, and the marketplace that Athena's influence was strongest. In times of siege, she was the stone in the wall. In times of unrest, she was the calm voice in the chamber. In times of celebration, she was the banner, the rhythm of civic pride. Cities built in her image didn't just survive. They endured. They inspired. For Athena, the city was not a cage. It was a forge where minds could sharpen, dreams could coalesce, and people could become more than the sum of their fears. And in every well-planned road, every law debated in good faith, every school built to uplift a child, there she still dwells. Chapter 11. Athena and the Arts, Muse of Form and Function. Athena was not simply a goddess of logic and war. She was a muse of mastery. Where Apollo inspired song and Dionysus kindled frenzy, Athena cultivated craft, the discipline where beauty meets purpose. In every loom, chisel, and compass, her essence whispered. She was the divine architect of skill, the unseen hand in every act of intentional creation. To weave was sacred to her, not just for the cloth, but for the pattern, for the story it told. Women who threaded myth into fabric were said to work beneath her gaze. The tragic tale of Arachne, a mortal who dared outshine the goddess, was not simply punishment. It was testament to Athena's reverence for excellence and humility. She championed potters and sculptors who shaped earth into form, metal workers who bent fire to forge shields as symbolic as they were practical, builders who sketched ideas into temples whose geometry touched the divine, and engineers who aligned moving parts with celestial truth. Her favor rested not in spontaneity, but in intent. Where others saw art as pleasure, Athena saw it as power, a silent argument made visible. She taught that design was never frivolous. A well-shaped tool was as noble as a lyric, a clean column as lasting as a law. The arts under Athena's influence were never separate from life. They were life, elevated. In every painted urn that tells a myth, in every arch that holds its shape, in every thread that binds story to function, Athena is present, not in vanity, in purpose. For what is art, if not war in another form? A war not of weapons, but of meaning. Chapter 12. The Warrior's Mercy. Athena and justice is not the absence of war. It is what remains when the swords have fallen and decisions must still be made. Among the gods, none embodied this paradox more than Athena. Though a warrior, she was never cruel. Though armed, she sought peace. And though divine, she understood restraint. Her mercy was not softness. It was strength measured in silence. Athena's justice was not born of thunder like Zeus's, nor was it reactive, like Ares' vengeance. It was a justice of deliberation, of weighing, of careful balance between retribution and reason. She did not punish blindly. She listened. The ancient court of the Areopagus, Athens's first tribunal, was believed to have been founded under her influence. There, law replaced vengeance. The trial of Orestes, accused of matricide, was one of the first moral tests of this new order. Half the judges voted to convict, half to acquit. Athena cast the final vote for mercy, not because the crime was erased, but because humanity must learn to choose justice over blood. In her, the sword and the scale were never at odds. She upheld oaths but forgave growth. She protected the innocent but understood the complex threads of guilt. To those who committed wrong and learned from it, she offered redemption. To those who twisted justice for power, she gave no quarter. This is the deeper meaning of Athena's presence in the city. Not just a goddess of war, but of what comes after. She was the guardian of peace earned, not given. And even now, in every court where fairness is debated, in every moment when vengeance could be chosen but is not, Athena walks the threshold. Spear sheathed, eyes open. Chapter 13. Beyond Olympus. Athena in later cultures. When the old gods faded from the lips of worshippers, Athena did not vanish. She transformed. As empires shifted and languages changed, her image passed from marble to manuscript, from altar to allegory. The Romans called her Minerva, goddess of wisdom and strategy, guardian of artisans and scholars. But though the name changed, the essence remained. Minerva became the patron of imperial virtue, depicted on coins, statues, and imperial seals. She was the protector of Rome's learned elite and the silent judge in Senate chambers. Just as she had once walked among the philosophers of Athens, she now appeared in frescoes beside Latin poets and lawgivers. Through the Middle Ages, as mythology became mystery and pagan gods were absorbed or obscured, Athena found a strange endurance. She appeared in illuminated manuscripts as a cloaked figure offering knowledge to monks. In cathedrals, she sometimes stood, unlabeled but recognizable, atop columns, her shield resembling a relic, her spear recast as a quill. During the Renaissance, Athena was reborn. Artists, architects, and thinkers resurrected her image not as a deity, but as a symbol of human reason. She adorned the ceilings of libraries, the pediments of universities, the minds of revolutionaries. Botticelli, Raphael, and Michelangelo painted her not as myth, but as memory of balance, justice, form. In the Enlightenment, Athena was everywhere. Cities crafted in grid and stone invoked her name in their logic. Governments idealized her principles in their law. She was Lady Liberty's distant cousin, cloaked in wisdom, watching not from Olympus, but from courts and campuses. Even today, she persists. In the crests of schools, in the blindfolded statues of justice, in every library dome, every quiet courthouse, every quiet place where decisions are made with thought, not impulse. Athena outlived Olympus, because wisdom does. Chapter 14. The Eternal Symbol. Athena in the Modern World. In our age of algorithms and megacities, of legal systems and skyscrapers, the gods of old seem far away. And yet, Athena endures, not in temples or sacrifice, but in symbol, in the threads of meaning that shape our collective aspirations. She lives in statues placed outside courthouses, her blindfolded form holding the scale and sword. She watches over libraries and universities, etched in stone and steel. In logos, on seals, in architecture, Athena still rules, not as myth, but as metaphor. She represents what we still struggle to achieve, the integration of force and thought, power and wisdom, truth and tact. In the courtroom, Athena is the pause before judgment. In the classroom, She is the spark of inquiry. In the city, she is the harmony between chaos and code, between traffic lights and open parks, between towering buildings and civic voice. She is invoked when nations legislate, when movements organize, when artists and engineers shape vision into form. She is in every act where reason triumphs over rage, where planning outshines impulse. The digital age has not erased her. It has made her more vital. In an era of noise, she is signal. In an age of war by other means, informational, political, cultural, Athena is the shield of clarity. She may no longer walk in armor, but she moves in minds. And when we design cities that serve people, when we pass laws that protect rather than punish, when we speak not to silence but to understand, Athena smiles, not as a goddess of Olympus, but as a quiet architect of tomorrow. Chapter 15. The Lasting Flame. Why? Athena still matters. Athena is not just a goddess etched in myth, chiseled in marble, or preserved in text. She is a flame, steady, ancient, and ever adaptable. A flame that flickers not in temples, but in the minds and hearts of those who seek balance in a world of extremes. In an age of war, she offers strategy over savagery. In an age of noise, she grants clarity. In times of collapse, she reminds us that wisdom is not knowledge. It is applied judgment, thought in motion, purpose in poise. Athena still matters because we still need her. We need her when power swells beyond conscience, when invention outpaces intention, when truth is buried beneath spectacle. We need her in our classrooms, our courtrooms, our city halls, and our quiet corners of reflection. She reminds us that might must be paired with mind, that courage is not only the charge into battle, but the discipline to wait, to consider, to speak only when the words serve more than the speaker. She teaches us that being right is not enough. We must be wise. Athena endures because she evolves. She is as comfortable in the logic of an algorithm as in the silence of a library. She stands at the crossroads between tradition and change, guarding not just the old ways, but the best ways. And so, though Olympus has grown quiet, and the Parthenon has weathered centuries of stone and storm, her flame remains, not in worship, but in will. In those who seek peace through reason, justice through clarity, strength through restraint. Athena still walks with us, and perhaps, if we are fortunate, we walk a little wiser because of her.